From Vietnam
to the club.
This week we'll be discussing all things Francis Ford Coppola with Megalopolis and Apocalypse Now.
This is the Film Angle.
Welcome to the Film Angle, a podcast where we dive deep into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Kris.
And I'm Alex.
Let's get into it.
It is, I believe, the 2nd of October when this recording goes out, Kris. So we're very much in spooky season.
Yes, my favourite cinematic month of the year, I think.
I was going to ask, I'm pretty sure we've discussed this every Halloween, but we like to watch scary movies over October. I know me and Em, we call it Horror October, and we watch as many horror films as we can within the month. Now, we're very busy boys this month, so trying to get as many horror films in as possible is going to be tricky, but we're going to try our best. But I was just wondering, Kris, are there any films lined up that you're going to be watching?
There are some like classics like from I've seen years and years and years ago, but like have a really sort of thin memory of them. So I'm going to like revisit some classics of Lauren. I think we're going to do a couple of those Hellraiser movies. Because like Pinhead's like one of those sort of images as a child I was absolutely frightened of, and I had no idea what that film was about, what it was doing. I just knew that it scared the hell out of me. So I want to revisit that series as an adult and kind of like know what it's all about, because I know it's a really big cult classic, and so I think that's one of the big ones I'm going to chip off, and then there'll be some familiar faces in that group as well. I
haven't seen the Hellraiser films, so maybe I should add them to my list as well. But I always like to just like scour Amazon Prime for just like the
schlock, the
schlocky kind of horror stuff. I need to finish the Halloween films. I'm like 2 away. The last 2 modern ones I need to see. So I've got those to watch.
There's something.
But in terms of classics that I haven't seen, I always like to involve some classics that I've never seen before. And, I'm admitting to it right now. I've not seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre before. Ooh. So that's on the list this year. And I don't know if you'd call it a horror or a sci-fi, but I think it's somewhere in between the two. But I've never actually seen The Thing. So that's on the list as well.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was about to suggest, if you weren't going to bring it up, you should watch The Thing. But since we watched The Substance and we're all in on body horror at the moment, that is an equally as gross film. Definitely check that one out. It's brilliant. I've only seen it once. I think it was last October, and our mouths were dropping to the bottom, like to the floor. Like we were so like excited by that film. So I think you'll really like it too.
So those are some of the ones I've got ready to go. I did watch the other day. I was with the Cineboys, and I did watch a film called Rats: Night of Terror, and I don't recommend that to anyone.
Is that just like a film about a bunch, like a horde of rats and terror?
Essentially, it's basically Italian Mad Max vibes, post-apocalyptic future. It starts in a desert with a bunch of these kind of freaky looking, like Mad Max. They've got all like the punk kind of stuff going on.
Leather clad, butt cheekless,
all that kind of stuff. And then they ride to some house somewhere that's infested with rats. And for some reason, they never leave as the rats start killing off everybody one by one. Rats have kind of taken over the earth in the future in a weird way. I won't spoil the ending, but it is a fantastic ending to what is a really, really bad film.
Oh man, what could have been? Yeah, I mean, it seems like whenever you regroup with those guys, whatever you end up watching ends up always being interesting. So yeah, I'll check that. I'll add that to the list and give you my 2 cents on it sometime.
Yeah, do it. Just trying to make you jealous, Kris, so you speed up that move to Bristol,
Oh yeah, that's it. It was a good time. Did you watch anything else? Was that it?
We watched like a cop film called The New Centurions as well, which was probably, we thought it was going to be more quote unquote gunishment, which it was not. It was a bit more of a kind of somber piece about how you can go from like a an eager rookie to somewhere pretty dark.
So the Rat movie won.
Well, The New Centurions was definitely a better film by a long shot. But I guess in terms of after a very schlocky Italian horror film, it wasn't the vibe.
It killed the vibe.
It wasn't the vibe. But yeah, no, it was great. And then we just ended up watching Philip Schofield's Castaway trailer about 30 times.
Oh my goodness. When when does that release? I need to watch that as soon as possible.
So yeah, that kind of tells you the kind of night. Yeah.
He has
and if you don't know what we're talking about, if you don't know what we're talking about, just go watch it.
Yeah,
I remember sending it to you, Chris, and you were like, "I thought this was AI."
Oh, absolutely! It's like whenever you watch one of those like Tom Cruise videos where he's like in a mobility scooter going off a mountain. It was like on that level of like surrealness.
I need to see these. I need to see these videos you've been watching. Brilliant!
It's down the toilet at the minute.
Oh, great. Anyway, that's spooky season. I'm sure we'll do something on the week of Halloween. Potential plans to maybe do things with other people. So we'll get there. But obviously, I think after this episode, we're straight into our kind of London Film Festival time, which is very intriguing. So we don't actually know what's in store, but we'll figure out as we go. And very exciting. Very exciting times ahead, I think.
Yeah, you nervous?
Very nervous. I've got some business cards now, which I did put a photo out on Instagram and TikTok actually with Cody, my golden retriever. He's very interested in everything that comes out of a package.
Oh yeah.
So he was trying to eat the business cards, which is quite good. Which is quite good fun and made for some pretty cute photos. And then got some beanies made. I don't think I've put the picture anywhere yet, but maybe you'll see them at some point. But I think the idea was I didn't want to go too merched up, but it is going to be October. So I like wearing a beanie anyway. So why not wear a beanie with a film angle on it?
I've seen the beanies and they look really good. They look really nice. So
yeah. So we'll see if I've got the confidence to wear that to the festival when everybody else is just like, wow, look at this loser. It's definitely his first time.
Your stack of business cards and you just like trip and fall and all the business cards go on the floor or something.
I imagine like a gust of wind just flinging them through London, but like they all land in somebody's hand and they're like, oh, what is this?
Oh wow, like golden tickets.
Yeah, I'm going to scan the QR code and
overnight success story.
I know, that'd be great, right? That'd be great. Maybe I should have got some stickers and just like stuck them all around London or something. Maybe another time. Also, that might be vandalism. So if it is, I'm definitely not going to do that.
Well, there's optimism for you. That's the difference between Alex and me. Alex is just like, he is way more like, you rile yourself up a little bit more and like are more enthusiastic for better outcomes. And I'm just like, if it happens, it happens. I'm terrible. So we're like, that's kind of why we're probably compliment each other a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're like more naturally confident than me, but when I psych myself up, it's like, you can't stop me sometimes.
a train without a brake.
Yeah. It's like it's either like massive anxiety or a ridiculous amount of confidence that nothing can go wrong. And then when I come down from that high, I'm like, what did I do?
Also known as being a millennial.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Anyway, this episode is not about the London Film Festival or any kind of spooky films. Though I guess you could argue that maybe there's a bit of spookiness to Apocalypse Now, but we kind of moved things around a little bit with our Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time list. The next film was supposed to be The Seven Samurai, but the film after that was Apocalypse Now, which I had never seen before. I know, I'm sorry, Chris. You'd only seen it this year, so it's not like you can be get too much on a high horse.
I'm not the guru of this film, yeah.
No. So we're like, all right, Megalopolis is coming out. The big Francis Ford Coppola, 40 years in the making. He's, his own vineyards have gone into it and all that kind of stuff. I guess it's vineyards, not wineyards.
Yeah, he sold some of his vineyards, yeah.
Yeah, I'm only recently a wine person, somebody who indulges in a glass every now and then.
You say vineyard, like, how do we say it over here? I love the way Americans say vineyard. I just think that rolls off the tongue really nicely, but I don't know.
That's because they were all ex-Irish. I'm pretty sure it's vineyard, right? Vineyard.
Yeah. I prefer their version. Okay, anyway.
Vineyard. Of course you do. What was I saying? Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola. We're going to even shift things around in the episode. We thought it was maybe good to look at the past before we go forwards to the future. So shall we start with reviewing or discussing Apocalypse Now?
Yeah, probably one of the most beloved classics we've discussed so far on this BFI list. So so we'll be covering things I'm sure people for many years have already covered in depth, but we're a fresh pair of eyes on this, so we'll just give our best take on it. Because it's a lot of movie. It's a lot of movie. But you're right, other people, I'm sure everything that's been said about this film has already been, everything that could be said about this film has already been said, but here's some newbies to it. Absolutely.
Let's get into it. This is the section of the show where we catch up with our ongoing series, our Blindspots on the Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time list. And we're making our way down the list of films we haven't seen before, and this week we're on number 19, according to Letterboxd, which is, as we just mentioned, Apocalypse Now. Mm-hmm. Apocalypse Now is loosely based off the novel Hearts of Darkness, and it follows Captain Benjamin Willard. I think I said Benjamin then.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's the Willard bit. It got me confused. Anyway, Willard, he's sent on a dangerous mission that officially does not exist, nor will it ever exist. And his goal is to locate and eliminate the mysterious Colonel Walter Kurtz, who's been leading his own personal army on illegal guerrilla missions into enemy territory. And the film is a bit of a bit of a trippy road trip, beginning in Saigon in Vietnam, and then making our way up the river to Cambodia to confront Colonel Kurtz. And yeah, I am very aware of this film, I must say. The iconography, its status, and I don't 100% know why I've never gotten around to seeing it. But that being said, with all this knowledge, I wasn't aware of just how much of a weird, trippy road trip movie it was.
Yeah.
With no roads. A river trip.
Or just how, I think the word is contemplative it is, like how much room there is to kind of dwell on the film. I think considering like how much of a populist film it is, and like how in the zeitgeist of being popular with just about everybody who's ever came in touch with this film seems to absolutely adore this film, from film critics to general audiences. So it's really amazing to me like how this has sort of transcended both of those types of audiences, considering how actually naturally difficult the material is on the surface for like a general audience member. Because it's more of just like a giant budget art film, which is, it's so different to something like Platoon or We Were Soldiers or those other Vietnam films, which I've seen before. This is like the last one. This was like the last one standing that I hadn't touched for some reason, just like yourself. Sometimes it's like these big formidable films have such a legacy. You're just like, I'll get round to it one day. Perhaps that's a fear of disappointment, or I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I've seen this twice this year. So you saw the final cut this time? It came out, I think it was it earlier this year that Coppola had released it in cinemas?
I think he did the Redux cut, which has even more footage again, I believe. So I think the Redux was the new one, and the final cut was one from a little while ago.
It was the other way around.
Oh, was it the other way around? There are many cuts of this film. But yeah, we watched well, I watched the final cut. That was the first time you watched the film. You saw the final cut, right?
Yes, that's right. And then I watched the theatrical cut this time, which takes an hour off of the film. So a completely different experience.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned to me, Kris, when I was watching it, it was like, take a guess as to which part is the added, what was it, like 20, 30 minutes of film on the final cut. And I guess correctly, the French plantation scene, which although is a really great scene, it does kind of the vibe of the movie, or not the vibe, but the momentum of the film just seems to kind of like dip.
It's a very sleepy sequence.
We spend a lot of time there. I was also wondering as well, because obviously you just saw the theatrical cut, when they one of their final stops along the river as well is where they go to this place where a bunch of soldiers just seem to be going crazy and blowing up their own like bridges and areas which they're, you know, towers and whatnot. I don't know.
The giant bridge, like in the nighttime sequence where
they get on and one of the guys is like drop some acid and stuff like that as they're going through there. Yeah. Is that in the theatrical cut?
Yeah, that is part of the theatrical cut. Yeah,
because that bit also felt to me like this feels odd.
It's too that sequence is too expensive looking for them to leave that out.
There is that. It's also just very trippy, and it was probably one of the one scenes where it was like, I mean, I understand the idea of as we travel further up the river, the guys have been there for longer and longer, and the madness of the jungle and the war has taken over. And nobody is as sane as they once were. So like I get the point, but also I don't fully understand what's going on right now. But that isn't to say I didn't enjoy the film. I do think the film has a little bit of that though, where I kind of know what the film's trying to say after the first 40 minutes to an hour. And it does kind of relay the same point over and over again in a way. But that's not to say I didn't like the film. I did really like the film. I just want to shout that out there. That was kind of like my one criticism was just like, oh, I get it. I know what you're trying to do. I know what you're trying to say about war and about Vietnam in particular. It was almost as if like the different times we stopped was just kind of a slightly different take on the same idea of, this is bad and we're going crazy.
We also watched the documentary that was directed by Coppola's wife, Eleanor, that came out in 91, and Hearts of Darkness, which is the name of the original book that Coppola loosely bases Apocalypse Now off of, which is like a similar story about a group of people going down a river book set in America, and it's an old like 1930s book. I think Orson Welles originally wanted to adapt that into a film also, but failed to.
He did a radio play, I believe.
Yes, he did, as he liked to do. Yeah, and she actually uses that radio play, some excerpts from that radio play to frame her documentary. Very, very interesting. I would encourage anybody who watches Apocalypse Now to watch it afterwards, because it's very easy to watch, but it gives you like a newfound appreciation for it. So,
just kind of reveals the fascinating backstory to how crazy this production was. And I imagine most people who are, you know, somewhat aware of Apocalypse Now are aware of like its kind of bloated schedule and just how it came out of hand. But this really goes in depth as to like the details of what actually happened and why it became such a crazy production. It made me appreciate the film a lot more.
I mean, you see them celebrate the 200th day anniversary of being on production, so you know it's absolutely mammoth. But you only need to watch the film and see that the big Flight of the Valkyries sequence to kind of understand that, like, obviously this was a mammoth undertaking, and like everything you're seeing largely is real. You can question the ethical status of that or not, but it's a pretty epic production. But we start off with Martin Sheen's character. I think he's just such for me, he is such a great vessel, a great sort of vessel into this film to like really being absorbed into this world. We meet him. He's not like a bright-eyed or sort of like wide-eyed person who's like, oh, this is his first outing and he's like a young corporal or something going on this mission. This is a guy who's already experienced the horrors of the Vietnam War, and when we meet him for the first time, he is in the state of just completely like unraveling. There's a sequence of him just kind of, doing like martial arts in front of a mirror, being completely intoxicated and, covering himself with his own blood. And then the next day he is found still intoxicated, showered by the local army and brought over to receive his mission. So
from Harrison Ford, which, may I add, did not know Harrison Ford was in this film. And I know he's only in it for a tiny amount, but I was like, oh, God, he was handsome. I say handsome, he was as if he's dead. He's not dead. Yeah. But, I guess he's an old man. He's still handsome. He's still a handsome guy. I don't want to check out that, but he was very handsome back in the day.
Oh, yeah. This is 2 years after the first Star Wars, so it's like, but he looks younger in this one for some reason to me.
Yeah, very like smooth face. But I guess maybe he's not a rugged smuggler.
No. He has got a big parting in his hair or whatever like that. So we're done gushing over Harrison Ford there.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Willard receives his mission, and this is where I think the best sort of pairing to compare this film to, and I think the original book kind of is definitely based on that too, is the Odyssey. It is that sort of going through a journey that descends into madness. There's lots of temptations. And I think the biggest thing for me in the film, especially watching it the second time, was just how pointless this war is. I know that's such an obvious thing to state, but I think that's kind of when you mention that bridge sequence where everything is just like, I'm just seeing horrific images, and I can't place what the context of what's going on right now. And I think that's kind of honing in like, well, that's kind of the point where it's just like, we've completely gone by our own rules here, and we are just having stakeouts by stakeouts, skirmishes day by day, and what are our orders? It's completely descended into madness. And I love that sort of choice that Coppola makes, kind of in the world building, to bring in the fogginess when you're going down the river, and just it's almost like you're disappearing into the dark subconscious of your mind. Everything as he descends on this journey, he is getting further and further away from home, from that sort of civilization, that American Western lifestyle. And you can sort of see why Marlon Brando's character, Kurtz, as he's only in the last half an hour of the film, when we finally get to that character, we can sort of understand that this guy is so far away from a life he once led, that he can't believe that to be the same person anymore. And it's such a great allegory for what these veterans suffered over there, on both sides, just this complete madness. And Lawrence Fishburne's character, he's like 15 or 16 in this, sending boys off that just had no context or for what was going on. You take a 16-year-old boy out of his circumstances, living wherever he lived in the United States, and then plopping him here into a jungle. It's just like, it's comical. It's almost at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth saying as well, like Apocalypse Now only came out like 4 years after the war ended. And I don't think the American people knew just how crazy a war it was. Like, obviously there was a lot of protests against the war at the time of it happening. But I think it was mentioned in the Hearts of Darkness documentary that like we weren't aware of how much, like this was the 70s. There were a lot of drugs in this war. A lot of people taking drugs during the war, and this kind of excess of kind of American, I don't know what it is, but like this kind of imperialism and kind of craziness that went on.
Two completely distinct cultures intertwining and becoming a sort of monstrous combination of the two.
Yeah. And I think the Flight of the Valkyries helicopter scene, along with, kind of destroying this village for the sake of trying to get there to go surfing,
to get
napalming them, and wanting to go surfing whilst there's literal bombs being thrown at you. I think that purely encapsulates the whole film and what Francis Ford Coppola wanted to say about the war. So famously, he did say that he doesn't believe the film to be an anti-war film, even though I would say it, like, my first time watching it, I would say, like, oh yeah, he clearly hates the war and he hates violence, but he did say that any anti-war film couldn't be glorifying violence as much as Apocalypse Now does, which I think is a really interesting statement. And clearly he didn't make it intending for it to be anti-war. Clearly he was against the Vietnam War, but his idea that an anti-war film couldn't be Apocalypse Now because it's almost too much glorifying the excess and craziness that went on.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't have that experience that he like proclaims it to be. I definitely did have a gut reaction to seeing the violence, and it definitely wasn't a positive one.
No,
I mean,
I don't think he's pro-war or anything like that.
No, but you know what I mean. But like, you can see why somebody would get a real kick and enjoyment, and you know there is a percentage of you that does get such an enjoyment from seeing Robert Duvall as 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 uh as the Captain Kilgore, and you just seeing him, you know, that is a humorous character. He is a product of madness or of this world, and I think the biggest thing about this film for me was the desensitization of everybody involved. Like we get to see knee jerk reactions of Americans killing Vietnamese civilians and soldiers as well, guerrilla soldiers. And it comes out of a place of, I think, self-preservation a lot of time, like normalization of killing, and you know, just kind of trying to survive. It's a really odd thing. The psychology of Vietnam makes it one of the more fascinating wars for that reason. Yeah, and the surrounding yourself in personal possessions and home, and the surfing thing is a product of that. But yeah, he's a fascinating character, isn't he? I mean, that is yeah, he really sells that. Robert Duvall, I think he's brilliant in the film.
I also think he gets the best line in the film, and it was the one that kind of sat with me the most, which is where he just says, "One day this war's going to end." But the way he says that line, you can't tell if he's sad or nostalgic or happy that it might happen. It's such the line reading is so ambiguous that you're just like, oh man, this, I can't tell. Is this guy sad that one day this all might finish? Like, he loves being here. Fascinating line. That one really, I don't know, just haunted me a little bit. I just love that line.
Yes, yeah. So the theatrical cut is different from the final cut. So we get all the surfing stuff of him like making them surf off the beach, and while bombs are going at them, like you surf where you fight, that line. But we don't get in the theatrical cut all the stuff of when Martin Sheen gets up the river and doesn't he steal the surfboards?
Yes,
and then Robert Duvall makes it like haunts him for a couple of days on the helicopter with the announcer trying to get the boards back. That's not in the theatrical cut at all. That sort of stuff. But yeah, I remember that being quite humorous. But yeah, this film, I think it's definitely more like a complete like sensory experience. There's such great, I think, Martin Sheen's dialogue rating of narrating the story. Sometimes that's like a bit of a cheap move, but I think it really does intoxicate the viewer into like kind of just falling into this world a little bit. I think he is just incredible.
But also because he has to keep his mission and his, to himself, but also he has to kind of try to get into the head of Kurtz. And I think you're right. There is an element of sometimes it's a little bit too, like the voiceover's a little bit like, God, everything's so hard.
But I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I like it as well because it also does a really good job of building Kurtz up and giving you that kind of conflict of, oh man, I think Willard's one day away from becoming Kurtz himself. So like, what is going to happen when they finally confront? It might not go to plan, which is interesting. And then it also obviously does a really good job of kind of just building up Kurtz to be this humongous figure, and that's why, despite the fact that Marlon Brando is not in it for a lot, he won an Oscar. And I think it all has to do with the fact that the film really just like builds and builds up to his kind of reveal, that you're as fascinated by his, the first time you ever see him, you've already got this picture of him in your head, so that you go into that scene with all that baggage. And I guess Marlon Brando's able to carry it and just say, "Yep, I can still do it."
And maybe that's like a good thing about the longer length of the final cut, perhaps, because as this journey elongates and comes further and further away from normal, like any sort of tangible normal, I suppose the more mysterious and more like fascinating that character becomes, this sort of like this end goal, this sort of demigod, that like this sort of figure. Like, what is this going to be? What am I going to come across at the end of the story? And it's anticlimactic and it's not at the same time, which is so fascinating. The reality of just I think it's just the reality of madness sometimes.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast the other day that mentioned that they would have thought it might have been more interesting if the film were to end as Willard enters Kurtz's territory, and you never see Kurtz, but you're left with that kind of
that would have been very yeah, that would have been satisfying, I think.
Do you reckon? Yeah.
I don't know. I appreciate the different angle on that, but I don't know. I think I would have came out really shortchanged by that film. I don't know. I don't know if it worked for me. I love the score is really cool as well in this film. I love like how was it Coppola did the score as well, or involvement in it.
I don't actually know.
Jazziness like to it, like a sort of bluesy quality that makes it just feel like you're going into like a big smoke cloud. There's this one shot whenever they quite near the end of the film, whenever they go under the tail of a jet plane and it's just shrouded, it's like a monolithic shrouded in smoke and this jazzy saxophone going on, and it's just like, it's really ghostly, very like you're stepping into somebody's like subconscious as opposed to an actual physical place. The murkiness of it's great. And I first watch, you're right, so disarming to watch a film like this, kind of expecting it to be one thing, a more action-packed adventure film, and then ends up being something way, way more contemplative. And on a second watch, I would really urge anybody to do it because it worked for me on a completely different level. I just completely fell into the film the second time around.
So having watched Hearts of Darkness then, and seeing kind of Coppola struggle to make this film, but also like really enter like the deepest, darkest, parts of his mind in order to conjure up this idea and this feeling. Like, do you think it was all worth it? He would probably argue
yes.
so. It's 19 of the greatest films of all time.
I think so, actually. I can see why the war genre was very populist. It had like similar to what our expectations of Apocalypse Now were going to be before we watched the film. I knew it was going to be a little bit more cerebral than the average war film, but not quite as dreamy as it was.
Yeah.
I really like that it cemented that films can be big and really, and can be very popular and successful and win 2 Academy Awards and be about something a lot more out of your grasp. You know what I mean? It's something a little bit more hard to. It's not tangible in an obvious way. So I think that kind of set a precedent for like, war films could be this as well.
Yeah, I wonder if Coppola would argue that it isn't a war film. It's almost as if like because it is interesting that Heart of Darkness is not the book, not the documentary, is not about war, and if anything, they've just taken the story loosely and dropped it within the Vietnam War setting. And it's almost as if the war is a bit of a backdrop to telling the story.
Well, in that first briefing that Willard has, he's told that every man has a breaking point. Kurt's had his, and so do you and I. And the film is about anybody being popped into a situation like this and their minds unraveling. And it's about confronting the darkness within yourself that
Mm.
exists and is primal, and you either come out of it the other side or you descend further into that darkness. I think that is the main. And what better setting to kind of justify that than the horror of the Vietnam War? You know what I mean?
It was very different to what I thought Apocalypse Now was going to be. I don't know if you had that same experience when you watched it for the first time, but it was definitely more of a war film in my head as to like, oh, this is what I'm getting myself into, instead of that kind of cerebral,
Yeah,
look at the human psyche. I
yeah.
wasn't expecting that at all.
You're expecting 20-minute sequences of guys ducking and throwing grenades and progression up the battlefield. There's none of that here. It's domination whenever it's happening, and then but it's very brief moments, and it's more just about witnessing. That's what it is.
It does make me kind of sad. I mean, I don't want to completely write it off, but I just feel like there'll never be a film allowed to be made like this again. Like a production that just kind of blows up into something huge. Obviously, some of the stuff is pretty bad. Like, Martin Sheen suffered a heart attack at the age of 36 on this film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he admits in the documentary that he was already in, as paraphrasing here, but he said he wasn't in the best shape of his life at this point, and he was drinking heavily anyway. So this film was like a bit of Francis has kind of adopted this environment for his actors, especially Sheen, I think, where he could mirror his well, Francis says to him in the documentary, I want this character. This is you. You're not playing a character. You will unfold as this goes along. And we see this with Dennis Hopper and other actors on the project too. And it's much more about, for the actors, a moment of self-discovery as well, battling their internal darknesses. So, which is why that performance is so good. He is so good in this film. And it's interesting that Keitel was originally going to be cast, and he actually didn't shoot some principal photography. Coppola just kindly said, you weren't the right fit for this. I can see that. I love Keitel, such a great experimental actor, especially in the 90s. But Sheen just like makes this such an interesting film.
Yeah, I would definitely say that Martin Sheen is the best thing about this film. And I think it is because I truly believed him as this kind of deranged, broken person, truly haunted, even though in some scenes he is the most normal person there.
Oh yeah,
which I guess is quite interesting as well. But yeah, just this kind of broken person set on this path of like, I truly believed that he had killed people, assassinated people, and was haunted by it, but also wasn't going to turn down, the invitation to do it again.
Yes, he's very ambiguous. You can't really get your grasp whether he's a good or bad person, which makes him almost like less of a character and more of a POV. It's almost like you're entrapped within his body for this film, and kind of you've kind of descended into that madness. I think he does a really great job of like making that a thing, and not understanding yourself or him, or that's a really interesting. His motives are blurry right until the end.
Agreed.
It's good. It's really, really good, man. Like I really enjoyed this film. It's just like it is so unique, and I don't know if there will be another film that is daring enough to go this way. I mean, it's so monolithic. Would you attempt to make something on the level of Apocalypse Now today? I don't know. Within our studio system, where politics are, we tend to kind of try to not to go down the route of, especially, it's such a the political landscape of the world right now is quite, it's all over the place. So I don't know. We only get like side genre movies where it's like something like, this is a World War II movie, but like, it's got like zombies in it, or we're going to have a historical film, like something, Mel Gibson would make, although that's not the historical accuracy of his films are probably questionable all the time.
I guess after having watched the documentary and seen how Francis Ford Coppola works, like he put a lot of his own money into Apocalypse Now as well. Like remortgaged his house and all, and put
Yeah, the
his own
Godfather
funds
money
into
went
it.
into that, didn't it?
Yeah. Which I think is really interesting. So maybe in a way you could argue that the film that we're going to talk about next is on a similar level to the making of Apocalypse Now. I don't think the production was as bloated, but he spent a lot of time trying to create Megalopolis.
It was gestating for decades.
40 years. 40 years,
Yeah.
apparently. So, I don't know. I mean, is this a good point to maybe jump into that film and go forward? Or is there anything you wanted to say more about Apocalypse Now before we... Because I think there is that element of like, yeah, nothing's ever been made like this before. But actually, Coppola's come back and he's got this very, quote unquote, ambitious project with his own money fueled into it that nobody wanted to touch.
Yeah. We'll discuss whether those potential investors were right or wrong.
But yeah, I think maybe now's a good time to get into Megalopolis. What do you say?
I am chomping at the bit.
Excellent. Let's do it then. Let's do it. But Apocalypse Now, just to end on, worthy of its place in the list?
I see no argument to discredit that position.
Yeah. I have said it many times before. I think it's worthy of the list, but I don't know if I would put it on my top 10.
It's certainly an exhausting experience, not in a bad way, but it will leave you sort of drained by the end of it, which is kind of the point. This next film, Megalopolis, it is equally as enduring for different reasons. Should we get into Alex?
Let's get into it.
The big one. Probably the most anticipated film, certainly by the film community this year, right?
Maybe?
Maybe,
because nobody's turned up for it.
It definitely proclaimed itself to be in this last year. So Megalopolis is, well, bear with me here, guys. I will try to take this slowly. Genius artist Caesar Catalina seeks to leap the city of New Rome into utopian, idealistic future, while his opposition, Mayor Franklin Cicero, remains committed to regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. So torn between them is socialite Julia Cicero, the mayor's daughter, whose love for Caesar has divided her loyalties, forcing her to discover what she truly believes humanity deserves. Guys, did you get all that? I promise I try to make that as simple as possible. Yes, I think get the big buzzword out of the room. Ambitious. Yes, ambitious is the word. Yeah, I mean, this is like a film, Alex. I was really looking forward to. I knew the reaction was super mixed coming out of Cannes. Although a lot of people were people were either saying, "Oh my goodness, it's an incredible that he can make something like this. It's so ambitious. It's so out there," and others were like, "The guy's gone mad."
Yeah.
It seems like you either go between the two camps. I can't see a world where I'm like in the middle here.
Yeah, I believe he conceived of the idea during is 1977, so potentially during making Apocalypse Now,
right.
And then has spent a lot of time actively developing it. But yeah, nobody really wanted to touch it because it's a baffling film, and I think that is portrayed in the thing itself.
In the film.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not 100% sure. Like, I know ambitious has been thrown around. I'm not sure how ambitious this film actually ended up being.
I agree. I don't think it's as like oh my goodness, only one person could have conceived these images or whatever like that. It's not like a cinematic. It's not It's not a Wachowski, $300 million self-invested sort of vision. I don't see it that way.
But I think as well, like there was a lot of hype in the build up to this over the last few years of like, this is pushing cinema forward. It's messing around with the form. It's doing things that we haven't seen before. So I think that was what maybe built up this kind of ambitious hype. But I don't think there's much in the film that pushes anything, apart from the fact that if you live in the States, some of the IMAX screenings have an element of live theater where somebody comes out and speaks to Adam Driver's Caesar, and then he speaks back to him. Obviously, all pre-recorded and stuff like that, and you can tell exactly what point of the film that is when
the aspect ratio changes, and
it's very small. You it drops down to the bottom of the screen, and you get the off-screen dialogue of a journalist speaking to Caesar in this moment, which would have been portrayed by an actual person. God, I wish I would have been able to see that.
So?
Yeah, I was the only person in my cinema. I would have clapped.
You should have done it.
I thought about going down there just to be like, see what it feels like to be in that moment.
Right. Okay. So I thought they were. I heard about this scene before, and I thought, right, they're going to cut this out of the film, and I was like, no, this is definitely the moment they were supposed to do it. Well, like, for what reason? Like, I was watching that scene, going, this would add nothing to the film at all. There's nothing someone asking him a question and him to respond. What is that? What depth is this adding to the film than variety? Of an experience. Yeah. Okay. It's interesting, I suppose.
Before we kind of go further into it, am I right in thinking, Chris, that you are not a fan?
I was bewildered. I mean, I cocked my head multiple times, which can be enjoyable in its own merit, for certain reasons that we'll get into. So for every 10 minutes, I find something that was fun, I suppose. But for the majority of this, man, I was bored. I was bored.
Yeah.
I know you liked it.
I think I liked it.
No.
But also, but not enough to be. I don't know if I'd call myself a fan or anything like that. But I definitely didn't come out of the cinema hating the experience, and I'm still baffled by it, and I'm looking forward to this talk with you. But I don't think I could go on record and say that I disliked this film. I was fascinated by it for the most part.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What would the reaction be if Coppola was not attached to this at all? This was made by a major studio, and J.A. Buena or James Mangold made this film or something like that. Would people be loving it as much? I'm not sure.
It's true. I think there is an element of knowing Coppola's behind it that it makes you not want to write it off completely, because you are watching this going like, this was made by the guy who did the Godfather films.
That's the thing. I'm watching this going, this is made by the guy who made the Godfather.
It's difficult. I don't want to. I guess that you're right. Potentially, if he wasn't involved,
and also Jack,
I wouldn't be as fascinated by it, maybe. But I think there was an element of me as well that felt like we were watching a film that should never have been made. These are the films where a producer or a studio gets involved and says, no, we're not doing it like that. This is ridiculous. You need to completely rework this. So there was an element of me that was like, I'm watching the unwatchable, the film that should, a film that should never have been released. Yes. This is, there are multiple films like this discarded every day, and we're finally getting to see what it would actually look like had there been more. Had one of these scripts been picked up and not had studio level interference. And sometimes studio level interference creates an awful, awful film. Yes, but sometimes notes are very much needed, and I think this is one of the films that kind of shows, there are definitely some notes, but there is definitely something in this. Okay. I don't know 100% what Coppola was going for, or I get that he was going for a fable, but I don't know what the moral of the fable is so much. I do have a couple of readings that I think potentially would be good to kind of share with you in terms of how this goes.
I would love to hear why you enjoy this film. Yeah.
But no, I don't know. But like my interpretation of maybe some of the scenes rather than why I enjoyed it. Because I wouldn't say this is why I enjoyed it, but I did wonder if like Francis Ford Coppola was trying to say something about cancel culture in this. Yeah. I mean, like, I know we haven't gone into the plot yet, but if you know, if I was to say that Adam Driver represented a kind of Elon Musk, and again, okay. I don't agree with any of this. I don't agree with any of this at all. But say he represented this kind of Elon Musk genius figure who leads the world into the next, you know, into its next big moment, utopia. Yeah, you know, society, politics, the media are so against change and being open to a utopian area that they are literally trying to get him cancelled at every moment by making up murder allegations, rape allegations, paedophile allegations, and flinging it his way, despite the fact that none of it's true. They're just trying to get him cancelled because his idea for a futuristic society is the way forward. Because I know that Coppola has gone on record, surprisingly so, to say that like this film is not woke, and that's why I've employed cancelled people such as Shia LaBeouf and John Vaught and added them to this film. So I wondered, and obviously in 77, you know, the idea of cancel culture I don't think was a thing. So I don't know how much of this has been how much of it I'm reading into too much. And how much of it is maybe, you know, he's been influenced by certain things that have happened in the past. That being said, just want to check it out there. Elon Musk is an idiot. I don't want anybody thinking that I agree with my interpretation of the film, but it is an interpretation I think that had me going, is he trying to say something about cancel culture here?
Yeah.
Did you get that? Or is that just me?
No, that's an interesting reading. I agree with that, and we all know you don't like Elon Musk.
Yeah, but also, would you say that like Shia LaBeouf's character represents that kind of like elitist left idea of, you know, he is from a wealthy, wealthy family, and he's actively stirring up the poorer people in society to rage against the machine, but he's misleading them at the same time. But also, you know, he wears women's dresses and his sexuality is questionable and all that kind of stuff. Like, it feels a bit icky.
Yes.
To say that, but like, I feel like there's an interpretation of the film where it's just like, is this what Coppola's trying to get at? I don't know. If so, he's on the wrong side of history, I think.
I get that. I guess I looked at that character at a more simplistic view, that sort of like, because I think a big, obviously, obsession of the film is the fall. It's blatantly about Rome as well as our own current future.
Oh yeah. New Rome, New York is now New Rome.
Yes, and that character that LaBeouf plays, I think, is more of like a nod to those historical figures who were a bit more, you know, like your Caligula is a bit more hated and more devious, but they happen to be sort of like you know, androgynous with their clothing anyway. But that was, I think that's just more like, I felt like, to me, just like a nod to those people of the past. And, but it is odd.
His character felt very Shakespearean to me.
100%.
And this is where I thought maybe the ambition was Francis Ford Coppola has tried to write a new story that feels like Shakespeare.
I mean, our characters, Adam Driver very frequently does entire scenes of Shakespeare.
Yeah, and some of the dialogue is baffling. Some of the story is kind of very black and white, you know, and very interesting characters all coming together. Is this a tragedy? Is this a comedy?
That's a really big thing. This movie cannot decide what subplot to focus on. Like, it's sometimes funny by accident and intention, but also, you know, you got this, the Adam Driver character is really self-serious. Caesar is very self-serious, and all that sort of stuff going on about the utopia and the development of Megalon, you know, Yeah, that sounds like a
A
big
new material that may or may not be made from his dead wife.
It can do everything and anything.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, there's like the mechanics of time are at play with this thing. I don't even understand. I don't understand that element. I completely lost. It's just doing so much. Like it's got its mind on 15 different things, and none of them are done well. Like I really enjoyed. Like I thought Aubrey Plaza whenever she came in on a scene. I thought, it woke me up a little bit because at least she kind of seems like she's having a bit of fun here. But
she plays it almost as if she's in on the joke. I think this was like her performance. I really liked it as well, but there was an element of she was kind of smirking the whole time as she was saying the lines, like she was fully aware that this was just ridiculous.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, what else?
I mean, her
do?
character's called Wow Platinum.
Yeah, Wow Platinum, incredible. I mean,
and she has one of the worst lines in the whole film, where she says, "Adam Driver, you're hella anal."
Yes.
And I feel hella oral as she then gets on her knees. And you're just like, oh no, I can't believe you had to say that line. And I can't believe somebody actually wrote that down.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst lines I've ever heard in my life.
That's the thing, man. I felt really embarrassed for a lot of the actors here. And but I do actually feel like when I watched Giancarlo Esposito, like in his role as the mayor, I actually think I noticed physical discomfort from him in that performance.
No, all right. So here's the thing. I think the majority of people in this actually prove that they are great actors because I think they make it work. Some of the dialogue is so atrocious.
Yes, I think
I'm surprised how well people like Adam Driver do.
Well, he can just do his thing and he gets away with it, I think.
He's so believable as this kind of tortured architect artist.
Yeah, he's done this thing before. Yeah.
I thought he was excellent in this. I know other people have gone on to say that this is his worst performance, but I thought he was excellent in this. I think Giancarlo Esposito is excellent in this, and he fully knows the character type he's playing. He gets it. You know, the politician that is, again, trying to cancel Adam Driver, but is corrupt himself. And
that's very much like all his recent characters,
because he does always get typecast in a villainous role, but I don't think he's like a pure villain in this. He is.
No. At the start, he's portrayed to be that way, and then it becomes a little bit more complex.
Yeah, and he gets a very, very kind of like sweet, optimistic ending.
Yes,
I mean the whole film is a little bit sickly sweet by the end.
Yes, that is a very sickly sweet scene with his wife at the end. Yeah.
I would say the only person who kind of doesn't, I think, comes away relatively badly in this, and I don't think it's her fault at all. Is
I'm gonna
go on.
Yeah, I know. I think we'll both agree on this. Yeah,
Natalie Emmanuel.
Yeah,
I think that's how you pronounce her name. But again,
I think she's given terrible dialogue though.
She's given a lot of exposition.
Daddy, like all that sort of stuff all the time, and it's like,
she's the main character of the film, and it presents her at the start as to be this kind of wild party girl who, you know, through the course of the film is supposed to like almost change her ways and have this drive to follow Adam Driver because she so believes in his kind of utopian future, but that happens within 2 scenes. You see her be a party girl, and then in the next scene, she has this drive. So she never gets a moment to like truly grow, and because you never get the party girl idea from her ever again. Like, there's no scene which shows her kind of battling between just wanting to have a good time and the idea of wanting to build a future for society.
Yeah.
She is just fully on that mission from scene 2.
It's that Shakespearean thing of her just being pulled between 2 men, whether she goes for love or whether she goes for that paternal love.
She just becomes a muse. She becomes a muse, and it's kind of boring. And I feel like I do feel sorry for her. Out of everybody else, she gets the least amount of interesting stuff to do.
Do you think the film was a little bit backward in terms of every female character in this film, in terms of like of them being that, you know, to progress the story of the male characters? It felt like that for me. It did feel a little bit like out of touch
Yeah,
I'm
like
sorry.
Aubrey Plaza's the femme fatale who can use her, her sexuality and her body
Hmm.
to move things forward. And then the only other woman in the film, oh no, there's two women in the film who are just mothers. To
Yeah, some great act. You got like Catherine Hunter, and she doesn't get much to do, and yeah.
Yeah, Catherine Hunter is just kind of the supportive mother of uh, Natalia Emmanuel's character, and then you have I don't know the lady who plays Adam Driver's mother in this, but she's just there to kind of reinforce the fact that she hates him and she doesn't support him in anything he
Yeah,
does. But
yeah.
again, everything is so kind of big and wild in this.
Well, that's a big disappointment for me, actually. I think we can really spend a lot of time talking about visuals. I think visually, this film is just like, it's like bad YouTube movie green screen at times. Like actually, a lot of the time, it looks like a '90s TV show a lot of the time to me.
Yeah, I do. Part of me was trying to maybe come up with why this looks like that. And I was like, because it does feel, the Fable thing is definitely, an idea as to why some of the performances and dialogue and stuff are quite stilted or grandiose. And then the imagery almost feels a little cartoony at times. I didn't know if that was supposed to go along with this storybook idea that the film plays with.
Mm.
Or whether, it was just kind of poor craftsmanship. But we know Coppola knows how to make a good-looking film. So, like, part of me wants to dive deeper into the visuals, or part of me wonders whether, digital cameras and special effects and, this was a $120 million film of his own money as well.
Yeah.
Whether he just made some bad choices along the way with, as to how he uses that money. I don't know.
Yeah. It's yeah, because I never really, because this is New Rome, so it's a complete integration of New York City and ancient Rome, but I never really believed in that integration. I felt like the flourishes were just not quite there. Like all the cars are just modern day cars. It just looks like they shot it on the street normally, and then the only flourish would be like the odd, like police officers would have a little bit of a Roman-esque embellishment, or they would have a Caesar like haircut. And I just felt like some moments they were like, oh, let's go really into the production design of how this would look, and some moments it was just like, oh, it looks like a couple just got a camera out in the street and filmed it there. So I never really believed in the world. I thought the crowds, like extras, like the party scene at the beginning, there's like 10 people in this club, it's losing that epicness, like of a real tragedy. Like I don't believe in this world at all. I felt it
also very jarring that the party is like in the morning when she walks out of the club and it's just bright sunlight and she's there in a party dress. You're just like, what
Shia LaBeouf trying to like rally up supporters for a riot, and there's like 20 people in the crowd, and it's like I don't believe this at all. It was it's fascinating, but I do feel like there was, I don't know, just you could tell the limitation of the budget sometimes, or whether like
there wasn't. That's the problem. There wasn't a limitation of budget.
No, it wasn't. But maybe it was just spent in the wrong places or overextended. I have no idea. And then you have people like John Voight. In this film.
Easily the most hilarious performance of the whole thing, and I guess this is like the cancellation thing. I wish Coppola hadn't gone out publicly and spoke about wokeness. Like, it's such a boring conversation piece. But yes, he has employed here John Voight, Dustin Hoffman, and Shia LaBeouf, who have all been very loosely cancelled.
Dustin Hoffman's barely in this. Same with Jason Schwartzman. It's just like blink and you'll miss him. Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman like dies off screen as well, which is very odd.
He just like collapses under like a
They're just like, oh, he's dead now. You're like, what?
Yeah, remember that scene that you didn't see? Yeah, he died from that. So, yeah.
Very interesting. But I mean, like, obviously John Voight and Shia LaBeouf are pretty terrible people in real life. But I will say I thought Shia LaBeouf's performance was fantastic. If you had to separate art from the artist, I thought he had a great performance in this and completely was playing the part that I assume Coppola wanted him to play. John Voight, on the other hand, feels like he just left a camera running on him and he just looks like a confused old man half the time. But I can't lie that I was wetting myself for some of his kind of
the
lines of
Madison
dialogue.
Square Garden scene where every 5 seconds we get like a line from him reacting to things, and he just looks so lost.
So lost. And then he gets a great moment at the end of the film.
Oh yeah,
where he's hiding a crossbow.
Well, it's not even a crossbow. It's like a little tiny Cupid bow and arrow, like a little play one you get.
Ridiculous that he's like, look at this boner. Like it's just the boner crossbow scene. I was laughing a lot, and I was happy to be able to laugh a lot because there's nobody else in my cinema. So I was just like, what am I watching?
Yeah, he managed to get Shia LaBeouf an arrow in his ass, and Shia LaBeouf goes running off screaming.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and I just find by the end of it, I was just like physically exhausted. Like I really felt like, I know it was 2 hours 18. It felt longer. Like I
think the only scene I truly felt exhausted in was the middle party scene with the chariots and the gymnastics, and Adam Driver's just off taking drugs.
Oh, yeah, the clowns were like really weirdly superimposed on screen. It was all just like,
and then your Taylor Swift type character, who for some reason you're supposed to believe at one point is 16 years old, yet she looks about 35, with a see-through technology dress and all that kind of stuff.
You can see right through me.
Yeah. This is why I think maybe there's. I honestly, I would love to see if other people read into the cancellation culture stuff like I did. I didn't know whether it was supposed to be like all that kind of stuff feels a little on the nose of like mega pop stars not truly being who they say they are. A lack of authenticity within celebrity culture or something like that. I don't know. But that whole scene, it was just like, oh, come on, man, give it a break. I'm done here. There's only so many times I can watch Adam Driver take drugs and be like, whoa, architecture, the humanity. I was like, oh, man. Though he does get a great moment later on where he comes back from his assassination attempt, which is a great scene. Thought that was a great scene.
Yeah.
And he has this gold part.
He's got like it looks like opal,
from having Megalodon on him or whatever it's called.
Megalon, yeah.
Megalon. And there's a moment where like he reveals that part of his face, and there's like several of him, and everybody's like in awe. I don't know. I'm rambling about this film now, but yeah. Anyway, party scene in the middle definitely dragged. Film overall, I don't know if I was bored at all.
Really?
I don't know if there are definitely scenes that drag, and there's a lot of the film you're going, why am I seeing this? Like, what is happening? But I think as much as it was only surface level emotion stuff, I really like bought into the relationship between Adam Driver and Natalie Emmanuel, and the stakes of when Giancarlo Esposito comes along and says, like, I will support you if you leave my daughter. And I guess Adam Driver never really contemplates that decision, but there's some interesting stuff, story dynamics and emotional wise. Like, there's not enough for me to actually truly care about any of these characters because they do feel fake. They feel like characters. There's no doubt about that. But I don't know. I was grasping onto some things, and I was enjoying elements of it.
I'm glad you had the experience. I really do. I really do glad that you had something to get out of it. I just find it very little to grasp onto, and I just find myself really lacking any care. I think the first 20 minutes, I think it kind of puts on the table everything it wants to say, and you're right. It's kind of just so surface that whenever it gets bogged down in such like just such enigmatic dialogue, I just lost complete interest.
It's very pretentious.
It felt like homework. Yeah.
It's incredibly full of itself.
Which is funny when you watch the Hearts of Darkness documentary. Coppola goes on a bit of a rant about pretentiousness. Once you become pretentious, you've lost the movie.
Yeah, but he's also a very kind of philosophical person, and you can tell like there are elements of this where they're really trying to be philosophical. But what was the point of the film, Chris? I was thinking this with Adam Driver's like big speech at the end, and you get shots of 9/11 happening at the same time. Like what was the point? What is the fable about?
That's the thing. It's about 10, 15 different things. and none of them ring clear like a bell.
Yeah.
That's the problem for me. There's a little bit of like reflection on his career. There's a little bit of commenting on our world and where a potential future of it. But none of these are fully realized in a way that, this is like Miyazaki's good, like Boy and the Heron that came out last year. This is like the bad version of that to me, like a legacy film where I just feel like, I really wanted to like this, but it's just like it does feel like you've lost touch. It's disappointing to see that. I don't know. I'm lost for words, mate. I'm lost for words. That was the meaning for me.
I do wonder if it was like this idea of like we have to come together in order to, get into the next, push society forward into the next phase of human evolution, or like we're such a fractured society right now. Why can't we go back to that almost? I guess some would, could be argued that post 9/11, the weeks following it, where America came together as a country to support each other. Like, why can't we all live like that all the time, kind of thing? Obviously, that is a very kind of 2D look at that part. There's also a lot of terrible things going on as well. But I don't fully understand the film. I'm not sure it is exactly what Coppola intended to set out to do, despite the fact that he had full creative control on it.
Well, he seems very proud of it.
I am fascinated by it. And its awkwardness, its stiltedness, some of the dialogue that it was allowed to get past the editing room. But at the same time, like, I kind of get it. It is like a modern Shakespeare kind of thing that it's going for. I get the fable. I get the idea these characters are archetypes. They're so big, and I don't know. Just I get it. I think I get it. But at the same time,
would you watch it? Would you stick it on and watch it again?
Not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. This is the thing. This is why I can't truly say I was a fan, but I think I did like it.
Okay,
but like not a lot. I definitely didn't hate it.
I would have been fascinated to see this in the festival circuit of a full room. Would have been interesting. Yeah,
I just would have loved to have seen the person come out and speak to Adam Driver. We both watched Mark Commode's review of this, didn't we? Which I think he does. He is also as frustrated as maybe yourself, Chris, with what he saw. Though I do think he's wrong on some of the. I do think Adam Driver and Shia LaBeouf were great in this.
Yeah, like I have no qualms of Driver. I think he's doing his thing. Yeah. I think
we are biased. We are biased because
yes, we love him.
Driver. We do love Adam Driver,
but he is like I actually think he's insulated himself from the rest of the film. Like, he is like the rest of the film is going on and everybody's doing their thing and their subplots, but he is like by himself, like just in this other sector of the film. So it's almost like he's in his own little play sometimes. So he gets away kind of unscathed for that reason. But then actually Shia LaBeouf, like, he's always going to be, if he's in your film, regardless of how problematic he is always the one I'm most interested to see, because I know of his ability to give very interesting performances. I actually thought he was quite toned down for this, to be honest. I think his costumes did a lot of the work there, but I felt like, I thought it was going to get a lot bit more. Yeah, he was kind of like a Jared Leto sort of performance in a way, but.
Yeah, but then again, like his performance is almost, he is supposed to be like almost like a Trump stand-in at one point, isn't he? Which then almost goes against the idea of this being a cancellation culture reading. So I don't think my reading's particularly accurate, but it is definitely something I was thinking about whilst watching it. I was like, what's he trying to say here? I'd love to just sit down with him and just get a better understanding.
But he is sort of portrayed as incapable though too. Like he's not like, you don't ever feel like this guy could control anything for more than a day.
Yeah.
which
it's
is
just
very like ancient Rome as well. This whole sort of like legacy of fathers, Caesars, and passing the mantle down to their sons, and everything goes to ruin. That's a big thing too. Yeah,
I want to find out more. I just want to find out more.
I don't know. I think the journey ends here for me,
You're
my
done
friend.
now. You're
If you
done.
find something that's interesting and worth, really, really worth diving into, please let me know. But yeah, I watched Apocalypse Now after this the next day, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it was like a tall glass of water in comparison. Yeah, yeah. Usually, I'm not this like aggressively opposed to a film, but I find it exhausting to try to find the merit. That was the angle. I
Yeah.
find, sometimes I'm quite generous, but I find it an exhausting like ride of a film. I felt like I had paid money to go drive to the cinema and do homework, as opposed to having an entertaining experience. I feel bad for saying it, but that was really my reaction.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I felt when we saw like Madam Web. And I didn't feel like this was Madam Web levels of.
I was more entertained by Madam Web.
Were
I gotta
you?
say, yeah. I even though I don't like that film, I find that more entertaining.
It is interesting that those are almost films on like the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of studio interference, though, right? Like Madam Web felt made by committee, and Coppola feels like somebody needed to say no to him.
Well, good. I mean, this is a new argument. And brings to the industry is that there's a time and place for everything. Yeah. We don't know. Well, all we know is the product at the end of the day. But I could see a version of Megalopolis that had a studio behind it that could still retain its themes and be visually and from a script standpoint be a better. I could see a better version of this film.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you there. There are definitely elements where you just like. Somebody could have tightened this up a little bit, allowed the actors to be less stoic and archetypal, and just allow them to truly act and bring something, create a truly, alternate future sci-fi Romanesque film that is grand, but maybe not as pretentious. Why are you laughing?
You know what? I literally, you were talking there, and suddenly a still image of Jon Voight came in my head, and I started laughing.
Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't have hired Jon Voight to play that part. No,
I could see Martin Sheen doing that role. I'm surprised you can get something like him.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the last thing I saw him in was like The Amazing Spider-Man, which seems like far.
He is like 86 years old now.
Yeah.
But so's Jon Voight.
Yeah. I would have kept most of the actors. I think Shia LaBeouf, as much as I liked his performance, he's too problematic for me to actively want to see him in films. So I probably would have given his role to somebody else if I was a studio head. But everybody else, apart from him and Jon Voight, maybe keep. Maybe not Dustin Hoffman. He's had his time, I guess.
Yeah, he didn't get much to do.
I don't know what anybody could have played his part. I don't really know what that part was all about, to be honest.
It was all just to have another big, extend the cast list a little bit, I suppose. I've got nothing else to say, Alex. I think Megalopolis was poo-poo.
Oh, you're ruining our chances of getting Francis Ford Coppola on the podcast to discuss his true vision.
Sponsor our podcast with his wines, because we do like wine.
we do like wine now.
No, always.
Only recently for me. There we go. Megalopolis. I am going to say.
You're in the middle. Your thumb's not up or down.
Yeah, I'm going to say go. I'm going to say go see it out of intrigue.
Oh,
and Kris, you're going to say don't worry about ever seeing.
Look, I think 90% of people will just absolutely regret buying the ticket, and I think 10% of people will find it very, very interesting. It depends how invested you are in this filmmaker and his career. If so, by all means see it, but there's buyer beware.
It is interesting. You can see why so many places didn't pick it up, and that probably should have been
Very interesting.
telling sign.
In my cinema, it only played in IMAX only and not general screens, which I've never seen before. Never seen that before.
Yeah, and probably didn't warrant an IMAX.
Yes, for being marketed in IMAX, there was nothing that it was one of the least IMAX movies I've ever seen. I would have actually enjoyed the film more on a standard screen because it can be quite busy. And although the editing is so choppy in this film that it was a lot on the senses. Probably why I was exhausted by the end of it. So that's a bit of a marketing ploy to me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
We're usually like everything on this show, so
Yeah, and also we usually have very similar opinions, so it's quite interesting to see you. I don't know, just completely be exhausted by a film, and me. And especially such a weird film, because usually it's the other way around, where I need more to grasp onto, and you're happy to go with something a little bit more kind of out there and artistic, even though I'm not sure this film falls under that, but you could argue maybe. So it was interesting to see that we are different on this film in particular. I don't know, maybe I went in
sometimes
with lower expectations by the end of, I don't know.
Sometimes this movie looks like Tommy Wiseau's The Room. I'm actually going to tell. I actually think some of the visual effects in that movie are better.
All right, Chris, I don't need to kick it while it's down.
But some people will tell you that was an intentional choice.
Right? Yeah, it might have been. I don't know. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't know. Go find out for yourself and let us know what you think.
I'll always be grateful for like the guy making like Godfather and Apocalypse Now. You've done your thing for society. Honestly, I love you forever just for those two things. That's absolutely fine.
It's a shame Eleanor Coppola passed away.
Dedicated to her.
But yeah. I imagine potentially along the way there was a fascinating documentary film to come out about the behind the scenes of this.
Yes,
and I would have loved to have seen it from her perspective in a similar way that Hearts of Darkness was. Portrayed,
yeah, the opening dialogue was just like, I try to get him to stop.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, there you go. Let's end it there. Cool. That has been the episode for this week. Next week, we are going to be full swing into our kind of London Film Festival coverage. And when I say coverage, we won't have been there next week, but we are going to do a bit of a preview episode and talk about the films that we're excited to see, or Chris is excited for me to see. But you're going to see some of the digital screenings as well. So we'll talk about some of the ones that you're excited to watch at home.
Absolutely.
And still take part in the festival in some way. And on that episode as well, we may have a special guest. So check in next week to find out more about that one. Which means that we'll probably leave our... it'll probably be a minute before we take off the next Sight and Sound film, which will be The Seven Samurai, because, again, I'm a terrible student of film and I haven't seen Seven Samurai.
It's a big movie.
It's a big movie. At some point, but probably not for the next few weeks. We will, as we're deep in the London coverage, we'll come back to it and we'll review The Seven Samurai, because this idiot, me, hasn't seen it.
You're not an idiot, buddy.
What a fool.
So that has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We really do appreciate it. If you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
We also have a Film Angle playlist, so if you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.
See you later. Bye.